Dobrý den. Já bych vám představil na
Good afternoon.
takové jedno zvíře, oni jsou tam dvě zvířata. To jedno je plš jantarka a takový to zvláštně
Let me introduce one animal to start with. There are two animals there, and the first one is a jantarka, with these strange, unusual little antennae. That's the strange liver fluke.
No a dělá to právě tímhletím šikovným způsobem, že teda mu změní tykadlo v takovýhle barevný pulzující orgán a ten kos vidí něco, co vypadá jako housenka, tak to sežere a tím se nakazí. Existují paraziti, kteří dokážou takhle pěkně zmanipulovat.
It needs to move from the snail to the stomach of an insect-eating bird. It achieves this clever trick by transforming the snail's antenna into a colorful, pulsating organ. The blackbird sees something that looks like a caterpillar, eats it, and becomes infected. There are parasites capable of similarly manipulating the appearance and behavior of other hosts.
Až do smrti, to se nedá vyléčit. Toxoplasma se potřebuje dostat do definitivního hostitele, tím je kočkovitá šelma.
Including mammals, even humans. My favorite example is Toxoplasma gondii. Roughly a third of you, though I'm not sure exactly who, are infected with this parasite and will remain infected for life. It cannot be cured. Toxoplasma needs to reach its definitive host, which is a feline, a predator. There, it can only reproduce sexually, producing cysts that are excreted in feces. This infects animals around, including cats or even big cats, which can become infected by eating one of the intermediate hosts. Infect each other as well. When toxoplasma is in a mouse or a rat, it alters their behavior so that their natural fear of the scent of a cat changes into an attraction to it, causing them to stay nearby. Where do they sense the cat's scent? How? The way it does this is very clever. It rewires certain circuits in the brain so that stimuli that would normally trigger fear start to provoke sexual arousal instead. As I mentioned, toxoplasma infects humans. It can't turn them into caterpillars, nor even into fearless mice. But it doesn't even make them let themselves be eaten by a cat. It's likely trying something similar. These are our students.
A vidíte, že jsou tam rozdíly. Taky když ženy hodnotily fotky, už jednotlivý fotky.
The photo on the left is a composite image of 22 uninfected individuals. The one on the right is from 22 infected individuals. You can see there are differences. When women evaluated the individual photos of these people, on average, they rated the infected ones as more dominant and masculine. Men are also 3 centimeters taller when infected, at least among our students.
Vysoce naředěný moči kočky, tak naředěný, že nikdo nemohl poznat, co to je, tak ji hodnotili jako příjemnější. Když se jednalo o kočičí moč, bylo tam 10 druhů zvířat, ale opravdu jenom u té.
And what about the idea that they wouldn't want to be eaten by a cat? We don't know. However, in experiments where they smelled the scent of highly diluted cat urine, so diluted that no one could identify what it was, they rated it as more pleasant when it was cat urine. There were 10 types of animal scents, but this effect was observed only with this one. And also, in the questionnaire, we asked them which of 10 possible animals they would want to be in their next life if they were to be reborn as an animal. The infected men chose a cat.
Ženy naopak srdečnější, společenštější a taky parádivější. Teda to jsme zase, to není podle dotazníku, to je podle toho, že jsme je pozorovali, jak nám přicházejí do pokusu.
Toxoplasma alters the psychology and behavior of individuals. In men, when infected, they become less sociable, more introverted, more suspicious, and also messier. Women, on the other hand, become warmer, more sociable, and also more concerned with their appearance. That's not based on the questionnaire. It's based on our observations of how they came to participate in the experiment. It also changes generosity in experimental games, like the dictator game. This is done with 2 people who don't know each other, connected via computer. One person gets 100 crowns and can send any amount, even nothing, to the other participant or opponent. Those infected, both men and women, send a smaller amount. Toxoplasma also increases the likelihood of traffic accidents by prolonging reaction times, roughly tripling the risk. This applies whether as a pedestrian stepping in front of a car or the driver failing to brake in time. It also coincidentally increases the likelihood of developing schizophrenia by about 2.6 times. Toxoplasma carries its own genes that produce dopamine, which plays a crucial role in the development of schizophrenia. So, I think I've intrigued you. Many of you might now be eager to get infected with toxoplasmosis as soon as possible. So, how to do it? Well, not from a cat. You'd have to somehow. It's much easier if you don't wash a carrot. Just wipe it on your pants and eat it straight from the garden, where a cat might have defecated 2 years ago. Now, about our soul.
Jako s našimi vlastními geny. Naše geny chtějí, aby se dostali do potomků našich. Geny toxoplasmózy by rády, aby se dostali i s tou toxoplasmou do žaludku té kočkovité šelmy.
Our body, but also our soul and consciousness, are in a struggle. Our genes are battling with toxoplasmosis, competing with our own genetic material. Our genes want to ensure they are passed on to our offspring. The genes of toxoplasmosis, on the other hand, aim to make their way into the stomach of a feline predator. We said we're playing on our own field, so we should win. But it won't be that simple. Toxoplasma has far more experience with this kind of match in every generation. The successful Toxoplasma always prevails. It had to encounter a host and win, while 2/3 of you, as I mentioned, will never come into contact with Toxoplasma. So, the match is uneven. Toxoplasma usually wins. But it's all much more complicated. In reality, within our body, our behavior is influenced by genes fighting. Genes inherited from our father and our mother.
Geny od maminky chtějí, aby optimum, protože ještě třeba chce mít nějaký další děti třeba i s jinýma tatínkama. Ale tohleto se týká všech genů. To tam jsou i geny od babičky, od prababičky a tak dále.
It's known that even in the embryo, how it will develop depends on the outcome of this battle. The father's genes push for maximum investment in this offspring, while the mother's genes aim for an optimal balance, as she may want to have more children. Perhaps with different fathers. But this involves all genes, not just those from the parents. There are also genes from the grandmother, great-grandmother, and so on. Every gene acts on its own behalf and strives to ensure its copy is passed on to as many offspring as possible. So, we study this. And of course, the result is a kind of jumble, a tug of war, and the outcomes can sometimes be quite interesting. I'd now like to shift slightly. Jumping to another topic, because in our lab, we also study some of the more intriguing unknown corners of the human mind, including questions like how morality arises and what shapes it. This is explored through thought experiments. Here we have the trolley dilemma. A runaway trolley is heading down a track where 5 people are tied up. You control the switch and can divert it onto another track where it would hit only one person tied up. But without your intervention, this one person would survive. So what will you do? Most of you, as we know from experiments, would switch the track. But it can be harder. Imagine you're on a bridge above the track, and there's a very large man leaning over. If you push him, he would fall onto the tracks, derail the trolley, and save the 5 people. Here, not everyone would make the same choice. However, not everyone thinks it's right to push him.
Přitom vám garantuju, že v době, kdy řešili tohle morální dilema,
What does it depend on? We explored this in the next part of the survey, where we asked about various attitudes. It turned out that for women, the most significant factor was their views on sex and how they are affected by sexual violence. Meanwhile, I remember that at the time they were addressing this moral dilemma. They weren't thinking about sex at all, let alone any sexual violence. However, their subconscious did it for them and led them to lean more toward agreeing to push the heavy man and save the others.
A tomu pružně přizpůsobujeme svůj žebříček morálních
Well,
hodnot.
it's essentially about the relationship between our consciousness, morality, and behavior. It's like we're constantly observing ourselves, how we act in various situations, and adapting to that. We adjust our moral framework to ensure our behavior doesn't conflict with it.
Prababiček a já nevím co všechno. Takže to chování tak úplně neovlivníme. Co můžeme ovlivnit, je teda to, jak si to interpretujeme, jak si to zdůvodňujeme a jak si teda pružně přizpůsobíme třeba i to naše svědomí. Obvykle zvítězíme, protože v tom máme dlouhou...
We can't change our behavior much because things like toxoplasmosis, inherited genes from our ancestors, and who knows what else interfere. So we don't fully control our actions. What we can influence is how we interpret them, how we justify them, and how we flexibly adjust even our conscience. We usually prevail because we have long practice in this. And then we conclude that what we did is actually right, even if it doesn't seem that way at first glance. I'd like to briefly follow up on the previous speaker. What you've heard here, it's simply not easy at all to behave correctly and act properly.
O to, co je správný, a nedělat nějaký moc složitý konstrukty, protože pomocí nich si můžeme pak zdůvodnit, že vlastně to vůbec nevadí, když se budou...
According to our conscience, because conscience is something a bit fluid, we should be very cautious with ourselves when considering what is right and avoid creating overly complex constructs. Because with those, we can then justify that it doesn't really matter if submachine guns or ammunition are sent to Saudi Arabia. I think we should stick to the basics. Black is black, white is white. Not be afraid and not steal.
Tak se podívejte na naše pokusní králíky a vyplňte nám tam některý strašlivě dlouhý, ale nesmírně zajímavý dotazníky. Pomůžete vědě, dozvíte se něco o našich výzkumech a dozvíte se dost i sami o sobě. Děkuju.
So, for anyone interested in our research and wanting to support science, take a look at our test subjects and fill out some of those terribly long but incredibly fascinating questionnaires. Will you help science? You'll learn something about our research, and you'll learn a lot about yourselves as well. Thank you.